Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So this happened, and I actually quite like it. You know, I thought I'd hate it more than I do, and I decided since I'm in quarantine for probably the next 2 or 3 months, and since I'm inevitably going to go bald, I should just as well, start getting used to it and see how I look. Which, today we're not here to talk about my hair. Today we're here to talk about how you can keep your animals safe and sound when you're in quarantine. Now, nowadays there's this thing going on that I guess I shouldn't say the name of because all the YouTubers are doing that. So, I don't know what that affects, if it's just monetization or exposure. And since I don't know, I'll not say it anyway. So the thing is going on, everyone's inside their home, the countries and states are in quarantine, and it might be hard to get stuff, or you should hopefully be able to take care of stuff without leaving your house. And that's basically what I'm going to teach you, is to do the best you can with slightly poor conditions when it comes to going outside and buying stuff. So this video is aimed at people who are either beginners in animal keeping or who don't have a lot of animals. If you have a small zoo in your house, one would expect you to know how to deal with situations like the one we're going through now. Since I don't have a zoo in my house, I can't exactly tell you how you would take care of that. I have quite a lot of animals, and I can explain and give tips and tricks on how to be able to fix some stuff that you would need to fix for your animals, especially food. It's the main concern here. Even though if you are an expert and you have a small zoo in your house, maybe I have some new things that you might want to try. So maybe you should watch this as well, I guess. So the first tip would be to, if you have animals that eat some sort of feed, some sort of pre-manufactured pellets or some type of food like your dog, your cat, your fishes, your birds that eat seeds. You buy the seeds, right? You can't exactly make them in your house. Stuff like that you buy mostly can be stored for a long time. So what I would say is buying some more. So stuff that would last for a few months, because that won't go bad in quite a while. Even if you have to lower your quality to be able to buy more quantity, your pets will be happy having food. Even if it is lower quality than in not having food at all. In order to keep the feed in the best quality possible, you should store it away in a dry, cold place. So the coldest, driest place you can find in your house, that's where you should store your animal feed. Well, I'm not exactly saying that you should hoard a lot of food. It's actually quite normal to buy from time to time large amounts of animal feed, and pet stores are mostly okay with you doing that. It's mostly fine, because for example, if you have a small dog, most people who have small dogs would buy a large bag of food, which they would buy like once every 2 months or something. I have 2 medium-large dogs, and I buy them a large 12-kilogram bag each 2 weeks. So what I did was, instead of buying 1 each 2 weeks or buying 2 each month, I bought 6, and that would be fine. It's not exactly purchasing enormous quantities of food. So I'm not saying you should panic and hoard. That's actually worse for everyone, and yourself inclusive. You should be, kind of smart about it. Don't overbuy. Think about if you can possibly get more, and let the events happen to see if you really need to buy more or not, and just buy a little extra to be on the safe side, okay? Also keep in mind that most of the animals that eat feed, even if, for example, the pet stores close and you have nowhere to find, well, probably dog and cat food you will have somewhere to buy, but for example, fish food, that might be harder. If your pet store that sells you fish food closes, no one is really going to think about that and try to be selling fish food to people. But you know that fish can eat stuff that you can eat, so stuff that you can buy for yourself, and that there will always be somewhere to buy in supermarkets or people that deliver to your house, you'll be able to find things that you can turn into fish food. You have to be able to do a little bit of research to find how to do that. Now, that can be hard and that can be detrimental to your fish and, well, yourself. So what I'd say is just buy a little extra feed and you'll probably be fine. Now that's very simple, so let's get on to slightly more complicated tips. So if you have animals that eat leafy greens, like turtles, sometimes some types of fish, and some types of other reptiles and some type of insects, if they eat leafy greens, that's something that you will always be able to get because you probably be able to get them for yourself. But to be on the safe side, you should know that, for example, you might not always be able to find stuff that is pesticide free. So if you want to feed that to some sort of insect and you can't be sure that it's pesticide free, you might kill your insect, so it's not too good. And even the animals, they don't have the same, necessities in washing the food. What I'm getting at is that, for example, some people might not be comfortable planting some lettuce in their balcony and then eating that lettuce that has been growing there for a few weeks or a few months, right? Your animals have no such health risks. They are prepared for that. That's what they do in the wild. In your balcony, there'll be no sort of pesticides, nothing like that. So what I would suggest is that you actually plant some leafy greens. If you just cut the sort of little butt of lettuce and cabbage, you can replant them and have them grown. I'll show you that, for example, I do this by default. I have a white-leafed cabbage growing in my balcony, which I use to feed every now and again my little turtle. I have only a small little turtle that eats leafy greens, but if you have more, you can plant more. It's not a hard thing to plant, it's not a hard thing to grow, but it might be a hard thing to come by in a way that you'd be able to feed your animals properly. So if you have it planted, there will always be from time to time a little bit of a food source. If your animal has an intake that is very large, for example, if you have a large iguana, I mean, you can't exactly plant enough to feed it, but you can always supply the amount that you have to feed it with stuff that you plant. So you will sort of lower the amount that you need to buy and make sure that it's proper for your animal's consumption. They have, these little different needs where you can eat stuff with pesticides, but you probably wouldn't feel comfortable eating something off your balcony. I can assure you that the most likely thing to happen is that your animal is going to be okay with stuff from the balcony, but stuff with pesticides on it, I don't know. I wouldn't feed it, so that's why I'm saying this. I also have a lot of other leafy greens that I'm planting and that sometimes I feed to my animals, and I do that by default, but if you don't do that, you should start doing it. Okay, so if you have animals that eat insects, that's something that can become very hard to come by very quickly. So, for example, I have some ants and a gecko and my crab, but So, what you should do is you should restrict their feeding to only 2 types of insects or less, because you should restrict it to stuff that you can breed in your house. And I know most people don't like to do that, but I have two insect types that really are very easy to breed inside your house. So what I would suggest is mealworms and cockroaches. Those are excellent feeder insects, but are also extremely easy to breed inside your house. Now, cockroaches are a little harder to breed, probably a little better feeders, but you don't want to strive for the best quality, you want to strive for the stuff that you can actually get. And I also despise them completely. I've never fed a cockroach to any of my animals. I hate them with a passion. So I have no idea how to, well, I know how to do it, but I would never breed them. What I do have is mealworms, and I'll teach you a very easy, simple guide on how to breed mealworms, especially if you do want to do it for years, if you're just planning to do it for a few months. This is a very easy but not very prepared for a long-term way of doing it. So you don't need to be prepared for very long-term. Usually these setups that I do last me anywhere between 6 months and 12 months or a year. So you should be okay doing one of these, and you'll have as many mealworms as you need for your insects and reptiles and amphibians and whatever. To create a mealworm farm, you get a plastic tub with a lid, and you cut some holes or strips in the lid. Mealworms can't climb, they can't fly as beetles, and they can't climb even if their lives depend on it. So there's no need to try to prevent their escaping, which is basically the big problem with cockroaches, is that they can't escape stuff. Mealworms, there's no problem at all. You just cut some strips or some holes on the lid, and what you do is you get a bunch of oats, a bunch of rolled oats, and you just make sure that they're organic, and you just dump them in, and you dump in your mealworms, and that's done. They'll grow into beetles. The beetles will breed, they'll lay eggs, you'll get new mealworms, the mealworms will grow, they'll breed, they'll lay eggs, you'll get new mealworms, the mealworms will grow, they'll breed, they'll lay eggs. You know, you get what I mean, right? You should give them some stuff that has a little bit of water, like once a week, but you shouldn't give them leafy greens. Those have too much water, and they'll make the place more humid and slightly more prone to molding, which will destroy your farm. So I would suggest, first of all, you do 2 farms, and you take care of you take care of the 2 of them, but you take only from one of them, so that you have a backup. And you should feed them once a week like carrots or potato, something that they will eat and also has some moisture, because especially the beetles, they do need some little moisture to live well and breed properly. So other than that, what you can do is you can gut load them with everything that you want them to have inside them once they are fed to your animals. So if you can feed them from now and then varieties of mostly dried stuff, for example, if you want to feed them some leafy greens, because that's healthy, those have vitamins and stuff like that, I would advise you to dry the greens out, like on the sun, in the oven, whatever, and then feed them. They will eat it anyway, and they'll have almost as much nutrition as if they were wet, but there's no risk of you actually creating mold inside your setup. Keeping mealworms and farming and breeding mealworms is so simple. It's such a passive thing. It's so easy, and you'll probably, if you do this for the quarantine, you probably want to do it for the rest of your life, because it's very easy, very simple, and it saves you, well, I wouldn't say it saves you a lot of money, because mealworms are very cheap, but it saves you the trouble and time of having to get them. For example, in Portugal, not every pet store carries mealworms. I have to drive 45 minutes to get mealworms, and I don't have a car. I'm a kid, right? So I have to convince someone to take like 2 hours out of their day to get me to buy worms. All right, it's just do it. Just breed them, please. Okay, so if you have a snake or a lizard that eats mice, and you usually do frozen and then thawed mice, what I will suggest you do is that, first of all, most snakes and lizards that eat mice eat like once a week, especially snakes. What I would suggest you do is you start feeding them once every 2 weeks, because the space in the freezer taken by the mice is better used to keep stuff for yourself. So what I would suggest you do is you feed your animal like once every 2 weeks, and especially if it's a healthy snake, just don't feed it at all. A healthy snake, and you should monitor this, of course, you should monitor their weight and their girth, should be able to go 2, 3, 4 months without eating. It should be absolutely fine. So reduce their feeding, because they'll do okay. It's not, to an animal that eats like once a week, 4 months isn't a lot, alright? So you can feed it less, or you cannot feed it at all. You should have some sort of better judgment, since it's your animal and you should know it. And that's basically my advice. Just feed it less, don't feed it at all. But if whatever you choose, make sure you have enough to feed it at least once every 2 weeks. Unless you know for a fact that you can do 2, 3, 1 month without feeding, and that you'll be fine if you've done it before. If you're confident on that, go ahead and do that, alright? These are just precautions. If everything goes alright in most places, you should be able to still go out and buy whatever you need to buy. However, you should prepare yourself for the case that stuff closes, or that you don't have the possibility to go out and travel to wherever you need to travel to buy this stuff. So you should prepare yourself in case you need to. So you should evaluate the situation where you live and take measures to make sure that your animals will be fine. Usually animals are a lot lower maintenance than as humans, so making sure that you have enough for them will probably not cause you to hoard and buy in large quantities. It should be something that will be fine and easy to do. There are obviously situations where it can be hard. If you have a picky eater, if you have something that eats very specific food, that can be hard, but in those cases you have to go out of your way to make sure your animal will be fine. Those are more complicated situations, but in most situations you'll be able to just follow the tips I've given, and you should be able to be prepared for the quarantine. Alright? So be safe. And I have one last tip, which is just for ant keepers, so I saved it for the last part of the video. If you have an ant colony, try to reduce its growth. I know it's sad to lose some time that you would have your colony growing, and that now it's not, and so you won't have as big a colony as you want to have as soon as you want to have it. But it's better to make sure that your colony doesn't outgrow their setup and start needing more space and more food and more whatever, because you won't be able to ship in more nests, outworlds, whatever, and you probably won't be able to go out and buy stuff to build them yourself. Stores that sell those types of things, like acrylic and building supplies, those will close very fast. So that's not something that you can do, is build and get new setups. So if you don't have already the possibility to make sure that you can augment their space, you should try to reduce their growth by giving them less food. Obviously some colonies and some species just don't decelerate their growth. They just start dying off if they have no food. They just can't, hold it, especially smaller ants. But, if it can't happen, if it's in their biology and you just can't make it happen, well, what can you do then? But if you can reduce their feeding and whatever you can do depending on your species to stop and slow down their growth, that would be fantastic. If you can put them to hibernation, if they are, I don't know, from somewhere in the south hemisphere, and for some goddamn reason they should be in hibernation or estivation right now, do that, because it will be better for them. This time is a period of time where most stuff isn't hibernating or estivating anywhere in the world, which is unfortunate. During the winter it would be easier for us ant keepers. Hopefully you can do alright. For everyone who's watching this video, I'll be down in the comment section, answering any problems and questions you may have. I'll try to solve every problem that is presented to me in the best way I can. I'll try to help everyone. I don't have a lot of stuff that I need to do, so I'll probably be paying attention to the comments whenever I can. And hopefully this video helped you, and hopefully it's helped maybe someone you know and you can show him this. So hopefully it helped someone, alright? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Please share my channel and subscribe.
Ay, 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 ay.